It is 6 p.m, so we will get started. It is Tuesday the 10th of September, and I would like to wish Danielle, our Governance Officer, a very happy birthday. It just so happens to also be my birthday, so it's very nice to share a birthday with you, and it's lovely to share my birthday with all of you here tonight as well. So we will start with the declaration of opening announcement. Today I declare that the agenda briefing of the 10th of September is open at 6 p.m. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the traditional custodians of the land. We also pay our respects to elders, both past, present and emerging. In accordance with the City of Canning Policy CM 105, agenda briefings are conducted to provide elected members with a forum to ask questions of the City's administration to enable informed decision-making by Council at the following week's ordinary Council meeting. Agenda briefings are not decision-making forums. Questions may be asked and answered, but no debate or discussion is permitted. Questions must specifically relate to an item on tonight's agenda. Elected members and employees must disclose any financial proximity or partiality interest they have in an item on the agenda and declare the interest at the commencement of the briefing or at the latest when the item is about to be discussed. Financial proximity and impartiality interest are to be disclosed in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act 1995 as they apply to council meetings. Elected members disclosing a financial or proximity interest must not participate in that part of a briefing relating to their interest and must leave the meeting for the duration of that item. Agenda briefings are open to the public. This briefing is being live streamed to the public via the City's YouTube channel. And lastly, could everybody please ensure all their mobile phones are turned off or at least on silent for the duration of this briefing. Tonight you might be wondering why we're wearing our football colours, and it's great to see that the Willetton Football Club is well represented with both myself, Councillor Kunza and Councillor Sekon wearing the green and white. Councillor Tuchek, would you like to explain why you support the Eagles? No, not why you support the Eagles, but why we are all wearing footy colours. Thank you.
Happy birthday to you, by the way, and to Danielle. But thank you, Deputy Mayor. Wearing the footy colours tonight is supporting Fight Cancer Foundation, and the funds go towards assisting kids with their families and hoping kicking cancer. So it's a good cause.
Very good cause indeed. Thank you, Councillor Tuchek. We will move on to attendance. As I am in this chair, it's obvious that Mayor Hall is an apology for this evening. We've received an apology from Councillor Singh, and Councillor Parkinson is on an approved leave of absence from the 24th of July to the 14th of October, inclusive. We'll move on to the disclosures of interest. Mr. CEO, do you have any disclosures?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've received, in relation to item 3.1, declarations of financial interest, I've received none. I have received an interest of impartiality from Councillor Shen Sekon in relation to item CO00824. The item details are DLGSC, CNLP, Willetton Reserve Sports Lighting. The nature of Councillor Sekon's association is her child is a member of the under-8s Canning, the mighty Canning City Soccer Club that utilises Willetton Reserve.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. We will now move on to item 4, question time from the public. We haven't received any questions on notice, have we, Governance? No. So do we have any questions from the public gallery? No? Well, then I won't bother to open question time for the public, and we'll move on to item 4.1, response to previous questions taken on notice. Again, there are none. We will now move on to deputations at item 4.3, which again, there are none. And then we'll go to item 5, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. Again, there are none. Gee, Mr. Hall should stay away more often. Item 6, reports of committee meetings. The recommendations of the Audit and Risk Committee on the 29th of August will be presented at the Ordinary Council meeting on the 17th of December. And at item 7, we've got reports. We will start with the Office of the Chief Executive Officer, item 7.1, with item OC00824 for the reimbursement of insurance expenses for volunteer environmental land care groups policy. The recommendation is up on the screen, and councillors, you would have received on your desks the newest version of that policy. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Councillor Hearn.
So through you, Ms Mayor, directed to Mr Arthur, do any of these not-for-profit insurance policies carry an excess, and in the event of a claim, who would be liable for paying the excess?
Thank you, through Madam Deputy Mayor. We're not aware of what the excess will be. That'll be the decision of the parties who actually engage in the insurance policies. However, our support is to the extent of what the cost of the actual policy premium is, not beyond that.
Councillor Hearn, did you have a follow-up question?
Do you think it might be worthwhile to specify what happens with policy excesses in the policy?
Thank you,
Mr.
and
Eudes?
through Deputy Mayor. I would expect the policy to cover for insurance is covers of eventualities and risk. I guess council would have to consider a further amendment to the policy if they wanted to consider covering off excess when a claim is made. But the purpose of the policy is to provide that support at the front end when a policy is required and determined to be required by the particular groups. If they meet the particular criteria of what the policy sets out, the reimbursement then covers off the insurance expenses and just for the premiums for the volunteer insurances for the public liability. In the eventuation that a claim is need to be made on the policy, the city's expectation is based on the current policy and how we engage with volunteer groups is that'll be something for them to manage for their own sort of issues.
One further question. Are there any limitations on reimbursement amounts, particularly in the event of a significant increase subsequent to a claim being made, other than eligibility for the reimbursement at all?
Mr Eudes?
Thank you. Through the Deputy Mayor. In my research, the premiums seem to be quite static for volunteers. However, we do know the insurance market does fluctuate and is quite volatile from time to time. At this stage, I did some research in regards to looking at what the premiums were for the last 10 years, and there doesn't seem to be a significant jump. So our expectation is we'll be able to budget accordingly and we'll have sufficient budget to be able to cover.
Councillor Hearn said thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Sorry, are you shooing away a fly or are you raising your hand? Okay. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A number of questions, if I may. Has the city been instructed by a government agency or an insurance provider that incorporated volunteer land care groups must sign partnership agreements with the city?
Mr Eudes?
Thank you. Through the Deputy Mayor, no, there is no direction for any party to enter into a partnership agreement. From a governance perspective, it was determined that it's appropriate to enter into a form of agreement to ensure that obligations can be met by both sides in regards to the works that will be undertaken by the volunteer bodies. More in particular, our focusing on the city's obligations under work health and safety legislation to make it sure there's very, very clear that the due diligence obligations of the city in regards to safe work practices and what volunteer groups will be undertaking, they'll be inducted in the similar sort of way that our staff are to ensure that all the obligations under the work health and safety legislation can be met through that sort of process.
Councillor Bain?
Is a copy of the partnership agreement available for elected members and also the volunteer groups to view before a decision is made next week?
Mr Eudes?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will check with the team, but I understand that the final template has been provided, but I can't see any issue with that.
Can I just jump in there with a question? So this partnership agreement, none of these three groups have signed one yet?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, not yet. It's still in the form of being negotiated some of the final terms of the partnership agreement.
Okay, Councillor Bain, did you have any more questions? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So if the incorporated groups agree to the partnership agreement and the annual work plan, from a city's direction and control perspective, Could you describe how they would then differ from unincorporated groups?
Mr Yildiz?
Thank you, and through the Deputy Mayor. Unincorporated groups and their engagement with the city would be considered as the city's volunteers, both from a legislative perspective as well as from an insurance perspective. With the incorporated groups, they are in essence a separate legal entity, and a legal entity that can be sued, can undertake and apply for grants and things like that, which an unincorporated group is not prohibited, but is prevented from doing so.
Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So if one of the groups wasn't to sign up to the partnership agreement, would that group in the future be eligible for city grants? Would they still be allowed to work on city managed land?
If I may clarify the question,
Yildiz?
Deputy Mayor, was that in relation to an unincorporated group or an incorporated group?
For the incorporated.
For an incorporated. To not sign a partnership agreement in accordance with this policy would mean that they would not be reimbursed for their insurance premiums. What that may mean in regards to being able to manage the relationship and also the work, I might have to take that on notice to find out what the team would be looking to do in that respect, unless Mr. CEO has a comment.
Mr CEO?
Look, just to provide some commentary, there is an obligation on the city to actually look at these incorporated groups, and we have that workplace health and safety obligation. It is and does vest to me and the executive team as a person undertaking a business or undertaking. So in the same context as we would apply some rigour or apply some view to contractors, we do need to create some level of responsibility for the works that are being undertaken. I don't think the agreement would be onerous. I would be surprised if anybody would struggle to agree to it, Councillor Bain. So, but operationally, we think this is quite important.
Councillor Bain, did you have any more questions? Okay, I might just ask a few, because mine are very similar to Councillor Bain's. Do unincorporated groups have to sign a partnership agreement as well?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that that's the process that the team will be looking to do.
Okay, can I?
Just
Who's
to provide,
running this meeting?
Yeah, sorry. Just to provide some further clarity, the reason why we are refunding these insurance premiums is because these groups and the work that they are doing is valued, but they are doing things in city reserves and for a particular purpose. So they're certainly helping out that environmental effort in our environmental open spaces. So some of our incorporated groups, of course, are conducting different different things, supporting community clubs. So the operation, the practice, the work practice is actually different.
So obviously we haven't seen this partnership agreement, so we don't know what it entails, but does it have, is it just around occupational health and safety, or does it also include certain KPIs or work that these groups have to do in a certain period of time? So for example, if they're unable to weed a certain area and they don't meet that, are we then going to hold up the payment of their insurance? I guess without seeing the partnership agreement, one could be concerned.
No. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No. Whilst the partnership agreement requires an agreed work plan, there is no positive obligation that requires that whole work plan to be delivered. It's more about understanding the access to the locations, what the city will be providing them and what they plan to deliver over that period of time. But the partnership agreement is formed to ensure that code of conduct obligations, work health and safety obligations, a registration of who the individuals were they'll be accessing the city's managed or owned lands. And as the CEO said, it's not overly onerous, it's just making sure that's very clear on what the parties will be doing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. I think it's probably very important that we, have a look at that partnership agreement, and then we can obviously go from there. Councillor Page, do you have some questions?
Yeah, just to check with this agreed annual work plan. So that's the groups themselves will be providing that this is our plan. But obviously, if circumstances were to change, the groups are able to amend to respond. Are these living documents, or do they have to agree? And especially like you said, these people are doing that. If they have new volunteers that join mid-year, do they have to update that? What's the is this a living document, or is it something that is agreed every 12 months?
Mr. Yildiz, will this document be alive?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the annual work plan plans out the type of work they'll be doing for the whole year in conjunction with the city, but it's not set in stone. So it's quite a dynamic situation that if the priorities change at any point in time, the parties will come together and in essence vary that to ensure that it covers off what's required. Again, though, it's not a positive obligation that this is what must be delivered in that period of time. It is a best endeavours, but both parties coming to an understanding that that's what they want to achieve.
So who creates the work plan? Is it the groups or is it city staff?
It's jointly, Madam Mayor. So the city will know what they want to achieve under the local biodiversity strategy, and in engagement with the groups, they'll develop what plans from the areas that they're working in or what the work will be.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions, councillors? No, we will move on to item 7.2, which is the Director of Corporate and Commercial, Miss Lorraine Driscoll, and it's at we'll just make a note regarding advertised late item CC 01224, proposed land lease for Barras Education and Culture Foundation at 40 Edgware Street in Linwood. That item has not been published as a late item for this agenda briefing, and it's intended to go straight to the October meeting. We'll now move on to CC 02124, which is the monthly financial report. Councillors, do we have any questions on that item? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a quick note, just for possible consideration for correction. The Hossack Park Sport Lighting Project is referred to as the street lighting project. Moreover, can the city explain what the delays have been for that project in delivering it? Thank you. Director
Bowe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bain, you might have to direct my attention to... Oh, is it? I was just looking at the recommendation where it says sports lighting, but it's okay. We'll adjust that comment in the body of the report. The initial delay for that project, Councillor Bain, was a rescoping and a reduction in the scope. Obviously, with the work that was done at Hossack Park South, which accommodated higher lux levels for the small ball sports. We wanted to revisit how we delivered the Hossack Park North project. And ultimately, we had to re-engage with the funding body who agreed to the reduction in scope. There were some other issues in relation to servicing as well. I will engage with our project manager and provide some more commentary on that one as well.
Thank you, Director Bowe. Councillors, any more questions on that item? Councillor Hearn?
Addressing Director Driscoll, my question is whether we could report on expenditure on CAPEX projects which are carried forward, because I'm now aware that we're delivering a lot more CAPEX each year than what is reported against the annual budget.
Director Driscoll?
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we're improving our reporting of capital, and you'll start to see that from next month, and we'll start to provide you with more detail around the spend and projects commenced.
Yes, and Director Bowe can also add to that.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillor Hearn, I also intend to distribute on a quarterly basis an update on our CAPEX expenditure, similar to last year, but certainly take your comments on board. You'd like us to see us detail our expenditure on the carry forwards from the previous financial year, so I'll be sure to highlight that in the report I'll send out over the next week or so.
Thank you, Director Bowe. Councillor Hearn, did you have another question?
I think just looking at the monthly financial report, we do report against budget, and it does seem that with delays in the multi-year projects that we're probably not giving a fair representation of what we're actually delivering and what our expenditure is at each year. So I know you don't have to report on that under the Act, but I'm just thinking it would be really helpful to give a fair indication of how much work the city is actually delivering.
I think we all are all on the same page there, and we look forward to seeing that as of October. Yes, thank you very much. Any more questions on this item, councillors? No, we will move on to item 7.3, which is the Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Graham Bride, at item PD 00624. The recommendation is on page 53 of the agenda and is on screen now. I'm not going to read through everything because there's quite a lot here. However, I think I just wanted to make it clear, and please, Mr. Director Bride, if I'm incorrect, correct me, but items 1 and 5 is pretty much an adoption of the policies. Item 2 rescinds existing policies, and items 3 and 4 relate to advertising of those policies. So those listed items 3 and 4 will come back to council for final adoption. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Deputy Mayor. That's right. So items 3 and 4, the intention, if council supported next week, would be to advertise those particular policies, including in 4 the revocation of number of policies, and that would come back to council after that advertising period. Items 1, 2 and 5 are administrative in nature. In terms of 5, given the policy changes are very minor, under the legislation, council can adopt those without advertising if they don't change the purpose and intent of the policy. So that's how they've been broken up in the recommendation.
Thank you, Director Bride. So if we did have any issues with those policies in 3 and 4, there is still time. Councillors, did you have any questions relating to this item? Councillor Kunza?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through to Director Bride. First of all, thanks for answering a few of my questions today with respect to policy LPO2. I've just got a couple more. With respect to this space, a number of local governments are actually in the process either advertising or looking at policies that are a bit more aggressive with respect to following the WALGA template. I'm just wondering if this policy is adopted, and as you've just mentioned, I understand that it's for advertising, what will the city do in terms of monitoring this space? Will it be difficult if the city decides to change this policy again in the near future?
Director Bride?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, certainly there is a template that WELGA has prepared, which is a more aggressive policy in terms of ensuring trees on private property require a development approval before they are removed or pruned. If council was to adopt the amended LPO2, which is a tree retention policy, and over the next 12 months, once we see a few local governments have brought it in, I think the City of Nedlands at this stage is the only local government that's adopted that WELGA template. There is some legal risk around the policy in terms of whether the views around tree removal being development under the regulations is able to be substantiated. We can certainly monitor the progress of that policy if any applications go to the State Administrative Tribunal, and we can bring that policy back at any time. So council adopting this version, it doesn't mean that in the future, reasonably quickly, council could not pivot to that a more aggressive policy position in the future.
Would we need to re-advertise if we did that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, certainly if council was to adopt the WELGA policy into the future, it would be quite different from the current policy, and you would need to bring it to a council meeting, advertise the policy and then adopt it. So there would be some advertising that would be involved with that as well.
Thank you, Director Bride. Councillor Kunza?
A number of local governments, as part of these policy adoptions, have actually taken on formal positions in terms of advocacy to the state government. Has the city considered anything like that?
Director Bride.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Certainly, obviously, what's being considered at council next week is to review an existing policy. But if council, wanted to add in an additional recommendation just to reinforce, requesting the state government to look at a statewide position on tree removal on private land, it's certainly able to do so. I know WELGA is definitely advocating in this space, so certainly the industry is looking at the state trying to advocating for the state to implement a statewide approach.
Councillor Kunza?
Thank you. Just lastly, with respect to compliance and following up in terms of both private property and street trees, the city has been at times reactive in terms of especially street trees and verge treatments. What is the city's position in terms of providing proper resourcing to ensure that trees aren't damaged on verges and that proper follow-up is taken into account?
Director Bide or Director Bowe?
Or maybe I'll start if Director Bowe wants to add. Obviously, the policy that's before Council this evening and next week does include, for example, some protections around tree protection zones. So if there is a development adjacent to a site or a street tree, the expectation now through the policy is to ensure that tree is protected during the construction period. In terms of compliance, obviously we are more, our resources are geared more to reactive compliance, but we do have a small proactive compliance program in our area, obviously the same in Director Bowe's, you may wish to add to this. And we have talked about focusing on particularly tree planting. So when we have a development approval and we condition the planting of trees, we want to be or guarantee that those trees that are on those plans are being planted. So there is going to be a focus through the compliance area in the planning development space to just make sure that landowners and applicants are aware that when they occupy the development, if there's a landscape plan with new trees that are in larger tree protection zones, that they are planted and they know of their obligations. So that's an area of interest. It's certainly, obviously, working within finite resources.
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Look, certainly without being critical, I think we can do better in this space, Councillor Kunza, and I think there'll be no problem at all within our Parks and Environment team taking a proactive approach. We all feel that there's a couple of examples where trees that were significant or at least worthy of retention may not have been protected, and I think we need to be better in that space, and we'll do what we can.
Thank you, Director Bowe. Councillor Kunza?
Sorry, I said last one, but your response has provoked another one. With respect to follow-up, and I acknowledge the limited resourcing, does any local government look post-practical completion in terms of the trees that's supposed to be planted? Like what stops someone 6 months later removing what they were supposed to put on private property? And does anyone in the sector actually follow up 2 years later to check that that tree's there?
Director Bride?
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. It's a good point. Obviously, we do put in place processes that ensures that at the time of the development being completed, we do have a check in place at that point. But you're right, could be 6 months, 2 years, 3 years down the line. The landowner may change, or they may wish to pave over the area. We don't regularly re-inspect over a number of years. It's certainly an area that we could spend some more time and resourcing to really ensure that the trees are there on an ongoing basis rather than at a specific point in time. So, yes, certainly something we are looking at.
Thank you, Director Bride. Councillor Page?
Also on trees, but in a different policy now. In D02, Subdivision and Land Development's Environment, I did send a message about this, but no one got back to me. In section 4.1, it references site hygiene in relation to the management of dieback. Is there any additional references that should be updated in this policy about polyphagous shot hole borer? Are there any differences in the sort of quarantine and the site hygiene with those two different pests, pathogens?
Director Bride?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, sorry, apologies for not getting back to you. I did discuss it with my colleague and he has come up with some wording which we're happy to share with you. I think we can accommodate a reference to the shot hole borer in that particular clause 4.1, so we can accommodate that.
Thank you, Director Bride. Do we have any more questions, councillors? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just referring back to LPO 2, formerly LPO 9, page 59 of the large attachments, section 2.1. I'm not sure if Councillor Kunza raised this with Director Bride previously. The policy applies to all land, associated with development applications valued at, is that 10,000? Is that 100,000? I'm not sure. It appears that the comma's in the wrong place.
Director Bride?
Through the Deputy Mayor, that should be 100,000. We're just missing a zero, so we'll get that fixed.
Thank you, Director Bride. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so I note that that has now been included in LPO2, where LPO9 previously had the condition of the policy applying to developments or development site of 10 lots or more. So now you're using the $100,000 figure. I was just wondering what the explanation or the rationale was behind that. Thank you.
Director Bride?
Through Deputy Mayor, yeah, the purpose of that was not to hold up proposals that involve very minor proposals like carports or pergolas. So setting a limit of 100 grand really focuses on more prominent development, and we don't, landowners just wanting to do minor extensions to their property aren't caught up in this particular policy. So that was the intention behind the putting in a dollar figure in the scope.
You look confused, Councillor Bain. Did you have another question?
Just a follow-up question. So, but wouldn't the condition of 10 lots or more precluded people that want to build patios and carports, etc.? I'm just, yeah.
You're looking just as confused now, Director Bride.
Yeah, I'm happy to maybe have a chat offline, and we can respond to council once we've gone on top of that one.
Thanks, gentlemen. Do we have any more questions, councillors? Councillor Secon?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just in reference to the the administration policy RS03, use of words during building works and development, is the condition of the permit town bound? For example, is there a specific time period that the city will grant the use of city words for works and development?
Director Bride?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, it would be applicable to the length of the development, so it would be time bound. I'll have to just double check on the time period, but generally a build usually lasts between 12 and 18 months.
Okay.
I'll just have to get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bride. Any more questions, councillors? If not, we will move on. Director Bride has 2 items this time. Busy. We'll move on to PD 00724. The recommendation is on page 72 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, do we have any questions on this item? No, pretty straightforward. We will move on to item 7.4, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Mr. Warren Bowe. Item IE 01924, which is tender 11/2024 for the Queen's Park open space construction. The recommendation is on page 78 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, do you have any questions on this item? Councillor Kunza.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Look, with respect to the level of community involvement in this process, and this is no negative comment to staff and the communication companies we use, but I was very surprised to see how few people engaged in this process relative to any other project across the city. It's always been mentioned that this is a project that needs to occur, but is the city surprised at how little engagement that we got from the community given the level of investment?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and for the question, Councillor Kunza. I guess the large majority in the initial preliminary engagement with the community was done in 2021, and it was in response to the approach from the state government in relation to the availability of Queen's Park and the potential to construct the state football centre there at the time. And mindful that the planning process there didn't necessarily require a great deal of engagement regarding that project. The city undertook its own engagement processes through its own Queen's Park engagement program. I'm not surprised at the level of engagement. I haven't actually done the analysis or the comparison on the numbers from, say, Shelley Beach Park. Dare I mention the significant engagement we had, or the numbers of responses we had regarding that. No, I guess I'm not surprised. It was some time ago, and this project has been a long time in gestation, well before I started here. And it was at that time the entire regional open space that was the subject of a master plan. That's been consolidated now, but we can have a look at some of that work that was done. I'm comfortable in the level of engagement, if that answers the question.
Councillor Kunze, did you have a follow-up question? All right, councillors. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just seeking the city's rationale and explanation for the installation of the formal car park at Wharf Street at the northern end of the open space. What was the city's reasoning behind that?
Director Bowe.
My understanding, and I might defer to the Manager of Parks and Environment, Giles Pickard, on this, but that was a request that we received during the consultation process to increase and formalise the parking along Wharf Street. But I might ask Giles to add to that.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, thank you for the question. Director Bowe is correct in regards to that's currently an informal parking area with poor access. So the plan sought to resolve that through a more formalised access and also more formalised access to the bushland area as well.
Councillors, any more questions on this item? If not, we shall move on to item 7.5. The Acting Director of Customer and Community, Mr. Luke Ellis. And we've got item CO00724 DLGSC CSRFF, grant funding for Wyong Reserve sports facilities. That is a mouthful. The recommendation is on page 91 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, do we have any questions? I do. In discussions with this project, we've always been talking around the $1 million mark, but how on earth do we go from $1 million to $3 million for this?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. I wasn't privy to any discussions previously about a volume of spend on the buildings. We approached the project on two fronts. One was the condition of the assets and their remaining useful life, and the second was on user need in relation to the clubs that use the location, as well as the recently endorsed community infrastructure strategy to guide us. So at this stage, we have reflected options that address the requirements of the assets and getting maximum life from them, an option that addresses the needs of the clubs in alignment with the CIS, and that will give us the greatest opportunity to maximise grant.
So, Mr. CEO, if I could just ask, is this another case of this is our computer system saying that we need to renew this asset and we valued it at $1 million, and then we go and discuss with the clubs and actually go down and have a look and it turns out to be $1 million project?
No, I don't think it's an outcome of the strategic asset management system. What the asset management system is telling us is that the sports club is at end of life and does need to be addressed. I think what this project reflects is the combination of a number of projects. We've also got the improvements of MERV-MAC as well that are being included into this overall project build. So to Mr. Ellis's points, we have done a needs assessment. We do have an ageing asset there that does need, we think is at end of life and needs to be replaced. But this also deals with gender neutral change room in MERV-MAC and a far better configuration for a facility as we step forward. The municipal fund project allocation is $2 million across those two buildings, with $1 million proposed coming from grants. If that funding submission is unsuccessful, we will obviously need to rescope the project to come back with a project that meets the muni fund requirements that the city's sought to allocate in its longer-term financial plan.
And if I could just ask, are we confident that if we do get this funding that we are going to be able to deliver it? I mean, when you look at this $3 million project and the other projects that we've already got on the schedule for the next 18 months to 2 years, we're already up at about $10 million. Are we confident that we'll be able to deliver these large, obviously Linwood Ferndale is included in that, obviously that's multi-year, but we are getting up there in our capital works again.
Yeah, look, Mr. Bowe might like to comment further, but this is the most, in the 25-26 financial year, we'll be looking to deliver Ferndale Reserve and this project. They are the only two major constructions that will be under contract at that period of time. The expectation is that we'll have Ferndale under contract at the back end of this financial year, so it will be in delivery. That will give us an ability or a capacity to push into Wyong through 25-26, assuming, of course, that the grant fund is successful. So I think, there is no reason. Appreciate that we've got a number of multi-year projects, but there's nothing that I'm seeing that would suggest that we're unable to deliver that quantum of work.
Thank you. And just finally, is this project a rebuild, knock down and rebuild, or a renovation of existing?
Thank you. It is a little bit of both. Through trying to address the needs and looking at the asset, we considered a number of options that included new builds, renovations, and a combination of. The recommended option we've landed on is a new build for the change rooms and storage, and a renovation of Merv Mac, which will become the club facility.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Bowe, did you want to add anything? Okay. Councillors, did you have any questions on this item? No, then we shall move on to the next item, which is another bunch of acronyms. CO00824, DLGSC, CNLP, Willetton Reserve Sports Lighting. Councillor Secon has declared an impartiality interest in this item. An impartiality interest allows Councillor Secon to remain in the room and also ask questions on the matter. The recommendation is on page 100 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, do we have any questions? Oh, it's just me again. It's my birthday, I can do what I want. Mr. Ellis, I just wanted to ask, we already had a night lights application in. Do we know the outcome of that one?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do. We had an application in for two projects that Council endorsed in February of 24. The first being Ranford Oval Sports Lighting Installation, which we were advised has been successful. The second was for Rossmoyne Bowling Club lighting upgrades, which we are advised is unsuccessful.
Were we given a reason why that Rossmoyne Bowling Club was unsuccessful?
Thank you. A very brief response advising us that we're unsuccessful due to higher priorities within the funding round, and those priorities were not ours, they are the department's.
And can I just confirm that project for Rossmoyne Bowling Club was quite small, I believe around about 100,000, is that correct?
120 ex-GST was what we listed at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. So considering that the Rossmoyne Bowling Club, we actually had quite a lot of confidence that we'd get this because it was such a small amount, and they were quite desperate to fix one of their greens, and I believe that this grant application was for both of the greens. I believe that there's actually lights on their A green which are broken and can't be used for this summer season, and we kind of delayed the works hoping that we would get this grant, and obviously we had confidence. Is there any way that we can look at de-scoping and getting that A green done this financial year?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There's two parts to that, I think. The first is, can we de-scope and deliver a portion this financial year? Without speaking for Director Bowe, we believe so. The second matter is the funding of that item.
So how can we go about getting that done. Obviously, I'm not sure if the club's aware of the funding not being approved, but they are certainly hopeful or expecting that A Green to be done. Is there something that we can do and perhaps look at B Green, looking at B Green at another time? Director Bowe?
I'm happy, Madam Deputy Mayor, that we're looking into funding options to hopefully deliver that project this year. And we will report back to council once we land on that.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Did you want to add to that? Or Mr. CEO, I can feel you jumping out of your chair there.
I'm
Mr. Ellis?
happy to add a little colour to that if I may. Tonight's agenda, item 7.2, has a range of budget amendments. If council wish to contemplate early funding of this project, this would be the earliest opportunity. And funding could be drawn from the Community and Sporting Facilities Reserve via a similar amendment, which could be contemplated at the next meeting. And I'm happy to work with you toward that end if you wish.
Thanks, Mr. Ellis. I think we will take that one offline and maybe see what we can do. Just finally, I just wanted to bring this up because just in the report, items 24 and 25 seem to contradict each other, and I know that we have conversations offline about the priorities of these projects, and I just want to see if you can add to this, because my interpretation is sometimes if we don't get the funding, that we will find the money somehow to deliver these projects. And in the internal budget on item 24, it says this project is prioritised in the City Capital Works Plan for delivery in 24-25 and 25-26. This is obviously back in relation to the Willetton the sports lighting, and that $300,000 is approved in the annual budget. So if we've already got the funds approved in the budget and we don't get the funding, then why are we in situations where we have to look at de-scoping the work? I thought the grant funding was a bonus because the money's already been allocated. Could you just provide some context on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The project at Willetton is far larger than this year's allocation at $300,000. The amount, or the project rather, and its amounts were split over 2 years. We've listed for consideration next year in the budget approximately another $1.1 million. We split it for two reasons. One, to spread the city's capacity to pay, and the second, to allow us to do some preparatory work this year in terms of design development and any documentation required to allow us, once we find out whether we are successful or not in February, for the grant to then jump in for delivery next financial year.
So if we're not successful, can that potentially push the next year's projects away? For example, if I think Linwood Ferndale were on the 26-27 list, if we're not successful for Willetton in 25-26, would we then reapply in 26-27, therefore pushing Linwood back a year? Would that be correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's a couple of options we could consider. The first would be to seek alternative grant funds should they become available. The second would be to change the scope of the project to maybe one half of the reserve or another, or to, as you describe, delay and consider deferring another project.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Does any other councillors have any questions on that item? If not, we will move to item 8, notice of motions for consideration at the next ordinary council meeting. A notice of motion has been submitted by Councillor Kunza titled Notice of Motion 01024, Financial Incentives to Protect Significant Trees. And I believe Councillor Kunza distributed that amongst councillors late this afternoon, but that will be published in the September ordinary council meeting agenda paper. At item 9, we've got urgent business, of which there is none. Item 10, confidential matters. Again, there are none. So there being no more further business at item 11, I declare this agenda briefing closed at 6:49 p.m. And I thank everybody for their attendance this evening. Have a great night, everybody.